Tonight, tax changes to tackle the cost of living crisis. The Chancellor is cutting duty on petrol and diesel, and the lowest paid will pay less in national insurance. But is it enough for people struggling?
They are trying to think of any way possible that they can cut down their fuel consumption, and an easy way that they can think of is not to use the cooker, not to use the microwave. I'm just going to stick to the kettle.
Experts say we're now facing the biggest fall in living standards since official records began. We're on the road with lorry drivers, where the pressure is still on as inflation keeps pushing up costs.
The ferry fiasco, damning criticism of the Scottish Government from auditors. Money is still being funnelled into a shipyard with no sign of CalMac's new ships being fit to sail.
And in sport, the Poland squads, including starman Robert Lewandowski, train at Hampden ahead of the Scotland friendly. I'm Kellyanne Woodland in Edinburgh.
And I'm John Mackay in Glasgow. This is the STV News at 6. Good evening. We're hearing a lot about the cost of living crisis. Households are facing disturbing rises in heating bills, food bills and travel costs. Today, the Chancellor Rishi Sunak had the chance to help ease the burden being faced by so many. So, what has he done? To start with, he cut fuel duty by 5p a litre.
Rishi Sunak also changed the rate at which we start to pay national insurance to try to help those on lower pay. But there was no increase to benefits, and his opponents accused him of failing to understand the scale of the challenge people are facing across the country, as our Westminster correspondent Catherine Sampson reports.
Is the time right to tax working people, Chancellor?
Rishi Sunak left Downing Street with a blue statement and bad news about inflation sitting at a 30-year high. With prices soaring at the pumps, he says he wants to help.
For only the second time in 20 years, fuel duty will be cut. Yeah. Not by 1, not even by 2, but by 5p per litre. Yeah. The biggest cut to all fuel duty rates ever.
The change kicks in tonight, but do Scottish drivers think they'll notice a difference?
It'll make a big difference to me because the taxi, it's got probably saved me 40 quid a week or so.
5p off would make a difference, but I don't think it would make that big a difference.
Before, it used to be about £85 to fill it, but now I have to stop there. Yeah.
This 5p off that's been announced, does that really go far enough to cut the prices?
No, I don't think so.
Off the roads to help lower earners, the Chancellor's changing the thresholds at which workers will start to pay national insurance. From July, it won't kick in until you start earning just over £12,500 a year. But for many workers, national insurance contributions are going to be going up in a few weeks' time. Labour wasn't impressed.
People can no longer afford the Conservatives. Working families can't, pensioners can't, and businesses can't.
What we needed was far more ambition and far more boldness. They are seeing energy prices soaring. They are seeing the cost of living soaring. There was nothing in his statement today about energy bills, which are coming through doors right now.
At this food bank, rising energy bills mean hard choices are only getting harder.
Normally our parcels would contain a fairly healthy amount of pasta. It's a nice, easy, cheap thing that people can cook for themselves. We are now seeing people who are asking us to not give them pasta because it's going to involve them putting on the hob. They are trying to think of any way possible that they can cut down their fuel consumption, and an easy way that they can think of is not to use the cooker, not to use the microwave. I'm just going to stick to the kettle.
Many people using food banks are in work, but for those who aren't, there was no change to benefit payments today. So while the Chancellor did offer some help for those struggling to fill their tanks, there wasn't much for those struggling to fill their stomachs.
Live now to Westminster. And Catherine, what has been the reaction to the Chancellor's spring statement today?
Yeah, well, I think that fuel duty cut broadly welcomed. It's certainly something that a number of Tory backbenchers have really been pushing for. I think, across the parties too, a welcome for that decision to change the thresholds on national insurance. It basically means people can keep an extra £3,000 before they start to pay that. Though, of course, concern that for many people paying national insurance, those contributions are going to be rising. Now, at some points in the Chancellor's statement today, you could actually hear some MPs shouting at him, "Is this it?" I think, a real sense that some people were expecting or certainly hoping for more, particularly I think on benefits. There was nothing there about changes to universal credit, and of course inflation is rising. Now, the Chancellor, I think, has tried today to reposition himself as a tax cutting Chancellor. Despite that rise in national insurance, he says he'll cut income tax, the basic rate of income tax, from 20p to 19p in 2024. Worth pointing out though that in Scotland it is the Scottish Government that sets that income tax, and we already have a starter rate of 19p.
Catherine at Westminster, thank you.
Well, those working in the haulage sector say the Chancellor's 5p a litre cut to fuel duty will only scratch the surface of the surging costs they're facing. With fuel bills surpassing more than £30 million a year, one company is warning every increase per litre of fuel will have to be passed on to customers.
The trickle-down effect of supply, usage and demand is driving up costs across the board. A reporter, Vanessa Taff, has been out on the road to hear how they're coping.
Keeping the wheels turning is a 24/7 operation for this haulage firm. Crucial to that is a full tank of fuel.
I've been with Malcolm for 8 years now and driving trucks for 16.
Experienced drivers like Alan have been on the front line of the rising costs of life on the road.
It's got kind of crazy. Obviously, the company has to cover the cost of the fuel, but for me to come to work and then go home from work, obviously it's putting a whole load of extra cost onto me. So, you struggle to break even sometimes.
The company stores 10 days worth of fuel on site, and drivers are never far from the pumps.
So Alan, this is a nightly routine for you?
Absolutely, yes. End of every shift, each driver must refuel the truck, leaving it ready for the next man. Especially with the night men, they've only got 10 hours for working for Malcolm, so every minute counts for a night driver at Malcolm's.
A full tank for a lorry like this one is about 460 litres. Now, it takes regular diesel like you or I would get at the forecourt. Tonight it needs around just over a quarter of a tank, so that's around 140 litres. But if you times that by a fleet of almost 500, that's an astronomical bill at the end of each day just to get on the road.
Our average annual fuel bill is about 27 million a year. Recently, for every 1 pence litre goes up, it costs us about £200,000 annually. So it's been a significant increase for us over the past few weeks, let alone the last year. And the problem we have just now is sometimes we can't even get a price of fuel before it's delivered. So that's quite worrying, because we're normally quite tight in that and close control over that. The last 2 to 3 weeks it's been more important to fuel in the tanks than worrying about the price, because there has been suggestions of a shortage. I'm glad to say we haven't seen that yet.
Every increase in costs here has a knock-on effect to their customers. In turn, that leads to yet more cost increases for consumers, driving up the cost of living. Vanessa Taff, STV News, Glasgow.
Silences were held across the country today to remember the lives lost to COVID and to mark 2 years since the UK went into lockdown. Those who've been affected by the virus have been reflecting on how their lives have changed.
But 2 years on, the pressure on the NHS shows no sign of abating, as health boards say they're under greater pressure now than at any point during the pandemic. Our reporter Ivana Holland has the story.
A moment of pause, reflection and celebration of lives sadly taken by COVID. At Hamilton Care Home, visitors, staff and residents marked the memories of those they loved and looked back on a surreal 2 years.
Unfortunately, I've lost my mum, a sister, my brother recent, and so it was personal to me and personal to the residents as well.
My wife's 90th birthday was through the windows at the lounge there.
Just changes your life entirely. It really does.
Another person remembering a difficult period is Mary Clark. She lost her mother and partner in the space of a few months and feels the lockdown left her isolated and cut off from services.
I still feel very angry about it. I still feel very angry that, you know, there's lots of victims of COVID. There's lots of people who'd lost their family members they couldn't see. There's lots of people who contracted COVID over Christmas and nobody came in to see them for weeks. And there's lots of people like me who lost somebody due to ambulances and hospitals not taking people in unless they had COVID.
Andrew Callaghan was one of the first and youngest people admitted to the COVID ward in Ayr in March 2020. Long COVID has left the physio with a way to go in his recovery.
I'm 100% to where I was before, probably not, but I'm 95% better. I actually said to Kirsten I didn't think I was going to survive. I couldn't, what we take for granted of going, I couldn't hold a conversation any longer than a minute without feeling as if I was climbing Everest. So it wasn't, it was very scary.
This was the scene on March 23rd, 2020. A complete and total lockdown, a complete suspension of normal life. But today, Scotland is learning to live with COVID. And that's despite hospitalisation rates being at their highest since the pandemic began. Health boards have been forced to ask the public not to attend A&E unless their condition is life-threatening.
We have a record number of staff absences through COVID, and other staff are filling in and they have been magnificent. However, it is very hard going in hospitals at the moment, and that's why we're appealing to the public to only come to our hospitals if they absolutely need to, if it's life-threatening or very urgent.
Despite over 12,000 new cases, 39 new reported deaths and more than 2,200 people in hospital with COVID reported today, health experts say we're in a better place.
We've saved tens of thousands of lives through the vaccine programme. And although we have many people in hospital, the need for critical care is still very low. So we are emerging out of this, even if we're not out of it yet.
13,684 deaths have been registered in Scotland attributed in some way to coronavirus. Each one a life that will be remembered for many years to come. Ivana Holland, STV News.
A shipyard has confirmed more delays and further costs in delivering two long-awaited ferries. Construction of the vessels for the Clyde and Hebrides has been plagued by delays and spiralling costs for over the past 6 years.
A damning report from the public spending watchdog found the ferries being built in Port Glasgow will cost 2.5 times their original budget. Our political correspondent Ewan Petrie reports.
By now, these ferries should have been serving island communities for almost 4 years. Instead, they remain works in progress, with the first now expected to be delivered by May next year, the second by December. For businesses on Arran, the delays have created deep-rooted anger at having to rely on an ageing and increasingly unreliable service.
February, for example, was the worst month we've experienced with being able to get trucks back and forward on the boat, and we are now making major efforts to downscale the size of our operation because we don't think that moving forward anything is going to improve. We can't afford to be sitting with guys just sitting waiting on ferries. We can't plan anything, we can't expand, we can't do anything.
As the delays increase, so too does the frustration for islanders. Today, the total cost of completion rose by up to £12 million on top of the £240 million estimated by Audit Scotland. The spending watchdog also says there is no evidence to explain why Ferguson Marine was awarded the contract when financial safeguards were not in place, a concern raised with ministers at the time.
There are multiple failings in the delivery of these two vessels in terms of procurement, project management, governance issues, as well as cost overruns and the need for greater transparency. What matters now, of course, is that there are lessons learned from this project.
The Scottish Government insists the ferries will be delivered.
There are no ifs, there are no buts. Those vessels must be completed, and they must be completed as quickly and as effectively as possible. The board and the leadership of Ferguson Marine know where I stand on this issue. They expect to be held to account for delivery of these critical ferries in line with the new schedule they've communicated to Parliament today.
Ministers are now facing increasing calls for a public inquiry.
This report leaves the SNP hold below the waterline when it comes to their record on ferries.
If you're not confident enough, Cabinet Secretary, to state your position on this,
Why should any islanders have any confidence in what you are saying now?
Amid the political fallout from the ferries, islanders can only hope this delay will be the last. Ewan Featrey, STV News.
So Ewan, how significant is this report from Audit Scotland?
Well, it is another report highly critical of the process of building these ferries, and it comes little more than a year after MSPs found catastrophic failures throughout the whole project. But what it does is point to the fact that major issues are still to be resolved, and one of the most worrying of these perhaps is the fact that remedial work continues to be uncovered here, and the full extent of that won't be known until all the systems are tested on board these vessels, and some of those were installed several years ago now, so that does have the potential to push this back even further. Today the Finance Secretary insisted that these ferries will be delivered to this new schedule, although she declined the invitation to stake her position on it.
All right, Ewan, live from Port Glasgow, thanks very much.
Unions are protesting at Cairnryan, where P&O runs its Scotland to Northern Ireland service. The ferry operator, owned by the Dubai-based firm DP World, is under fire for replacing sacked staff with cheaper agency workers.
The Prime Minister says he believes that move broke the law and that the UK government will be taking action. P&O deny they've broken the law and say they've had to take the decision in order to keep the loss-making company afloat. Ralph Blunsome reports.
We say no! P&O! We say no! P&O!
More than 100 workers and supporters came to Cairnryan to take part in this protest.
And if we need to come back every week, we'll do that.
It's one of a series of rallies at ports across the UK, organised by the RMT Union. Dumfries and Galloway politicians joined the ranks, angered by the action of P&O's management.
They've been treated abysmally by the company. We're demanding that those jobs are reinstated to make sure we've got a future for workers here in Stranraer. It's also about sending a signal to the UK government that their employment laws are just not strong enough. We need to outlaw fire and rehire, because if this can happen at P&O ferries, it can happen anywhere.
Two of those workers have today spoken about what's happened to them. Gail Dowie and Danny McQuaid have spent their working lives on the Cairnryan to Larne route.
Our careers at sea are all we have known. We're not trained to do anything else. We're seafarers. We've been at sea from we were young teenagers. This is all we know.
Despite P&O's multi-million-pound settlement offer, there is real anger here amongst those taking part in this protest. Here, they say, the fight is far from over.
It's going to have a hammer blow effect in this local area here and in other local areas throughout the length and breadth of the UK and Ireland. So we're not in the business of selling jobs, we're trying to fight to retain these jobs.
At Westminster, Boris Johnson has indicated his concern at the way P&O management has behaved.
I think that it is no way to treat hard-working employees, and I can tell him that we will not sit by, Mr. Speaker, because under Section 194 of the Trades Union and Labour Relations Act of 1992, it looks to me, Mr. Speaker, as though the company concerned has broken the law.
Here we've heard calls today for sanctions to be placed on P&O and for people not to use the ferries. Here they say they don't want P&O's money, they just want their jobs back. Ralph Blunsome, STV News, Cairnryan.
Other stories across Scotland, and the Bank of Scotland is closing 19 branches by the autumn. The owner, Lloyds Banking Group, says it needs to adapt to the growth in online banking and would try to find affected staff new roles within the company. Branches in Broxburn, Dunblane, Shorts and Troon are among those closing.
A wildfire in Ben Lomond has been put out more than 24 hours after it was started by a dropped cigarette. At its peak, a 1 kilometre stretch of the mountain was on fire. A second major hill fire near the A830 south of Mallaig in the West Highlands has also been extinguished.
All of Glasgow's primary, nursery and additional support schools will close for 2 days next week as council workers strike over delays to equal pay claims being settled. Glasgow City Council say the closures on Tuesday and Wednesday are on health and safety grounds.
Secondary pupils and staff will have to keep wearing face coverings in communal areas in schools after the Easter holidays. The latest guidance comes as the surge in the number of COVID cases continues to disrupt education.
The SQA's management have defended their leadership after a Holyrood committee was told the organisation should take a short, hard look at itself. The comments were made by Professor Ken Muir, who's reviewed the exams body and recommended how to replace it. The SQA has hit back, saying they are part of a much wider education system and change must happen in every part of that system.
If it is nothing more, it's a rebranding of two major organisations, then I'll have wasted 6 months. And I think more than anything, I think the expectation that's out there that change and reform will come will land sorely with teachers and practitioners and head teachers.
Rahman has joined us for the sport, which is very kind of him.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Always off service. Good evening. Steve Clarke wants Scotland to keep the feel-good factor going when they take on Poland in tomorrow night's friendly. It's the first time the team will play since victory over Denmark in November. And with the World Cup playoff semi-final with Ukraine delayed, Clarke wants to ensure they pick up where they left off. Here's Sheila McLaren.
The Poland side, including starman Robert Lewandowski, got their training underway at Hampden this evening as they prepare for the final warm-up before their World Cup playoff final next week. Steve Clarke's side will have to wait a bit longer for their chance to book their place in Qatar, but after winning 6 in a row, it's all about continuing the momentum.
For ourselves, it's just a matter of trying to pick up where we left off last November, so try and find that continuity, that feel-good factor that we had. The style of play, the way we played against Denmark was good. We want to continue that. So that's how I'm looking at it. It's nice to get the boys back after 4 months. It's a long time waiting to see them. So it's nice to have a couple of good friendlies against good opposition.
While the Poland head coach kept fans guessing on whether Lewandowski would start tomorrow night, Scott McTominay compared the striker to his club teammate Cristiano Ronaldo.
Somebody who's not shy to get himself in the box and score goals, and somebody who, if he does play, we have to be aware of him. But as I say, full credit to him. He's had an amazing career, which he's still going. The longevity in which he scored goals has been absolutely fantastic, and for us, every football player in the world can look at the way he's looked after himself, similar to Cristiano, and that you get out what you put in. Football's hard work always does catch up with good timing for these top players.
Clarke says Aaron Hickey is unlikely to make his first start tomorrow because he's suffering from illness. And with Andy Robertson also missing, the manager needs to choose a new captain.
I haven't decided yet. I've got so many candidates.
With John McGinn, vice-captain.
Carl McGregor, captain of Celtic. Grant Hanley, captain of Norwich. Craig Gordon, captain of Hearts. I've got loads of captains. That's fantastic. I love it. But you're not getting who's captain tomorrow.
Got to try.
Now, Scotland's bid to co-host Euro 2028 has been met with late rival bids from Russia and Turkey. The Scots, along with the football associations of England, Northern Ireland, Wales and the Republic of Ireland, submitted their joint expression of interest to stage the event. Despite being banned from international football following their war on Ukraine, Russia has also declared a last-minute interest in hosting the tournament, as have Turkey. Anthony Ralston hopes good performances for Celtic can help him further get international recognition. The Celtic defender, who helped promote the women's team's match against Hibs at Celtic Park this weekend, has one Scotland cap to his name. He's keen to add more.
My aim is to play for my national team. That's something that I'm sure everyone strives to do, but it's not to be at the minute. But I'll keep my head down, I'll keep working both in training and in the games that I play, and hope that one day I can be involved in the national team. My main obviously aim is to play for Celtic and to do the best I can for them and for the team, and hopefully national team will come with that in the future.
Staying with rugby, and Scotland captain Rachel Malcolm admits they'll need a complete performance against England in their Six Nations opener this weekend. Brian Eason's side take on the number 1 ranked team in the world on Saturday, looking to build on the momentum of qualifying for the World Cup.
Our intention is to play for longer and stay in the game for longer, and to give us those opportunities, because we do just tend to fall away. So I'm extremely excited about the opportunity to play England. As an athlete, you always want to challenge yourself. You always want to push your team forward and push yourself forward, and there is no better way to do that than against the best team in the world.
And folks, that is all your sport tonight. Tomorrow night Sports Desk comes live from Hampden, ahead of Scotland's friendly against Poland. I'll see you then.
Get your fill of the action. STV Sport, sponsored by Papa John's Pizza.
Well, it's been a cracking day, and Sean's here to tell us what's to come. Don't spoil it, Sean. Please, don't spoil it.
Well, yes, many of us have enjoyed a gorgeous day. Lots of lovely blue skies, although we've got a wee bit more cloud in the far west. And that weather front moving its way in from the west tomorrow, so there will be a bit more cloud around, but a lot of fine weather around this weekend. And we've got that big change on the way next week. Let's have a look at the details.
Watch out for a sudden temperature drop. TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
What a stunning, delightful day it's been out there today, and we've got more good weather on the way as we head into the weekend. That high pressure right over the top of us. Next week, though, it starts to slide a wee bit to the west, and that opens the floodgates to the north. Big change coming. I'll show you that in a wee second. But for the time being, a lovely sunset out there. Plenty of clear skies around through this evening. A wee bit more cloud drifting into the far west later on tonight. And temperatures, like the last couple of nights, varying quite widely. Cold enough for a wee touch of frost central and eastern areas. Temperatures, coastal parts, the islands, staying about 7 or 8 degrees Celsius. Now, tomorrow we've got this weather front coming in from the west. A very weak weather front, but it will give us a lot more cloud, especially in western areas to start with. Central and eastern southern parts, we've got lots of sunshine, but we will see a wee bit more cloud coming in during the afternoon. Possibility of a few light showers, mainly across northern parts of Argyll into the southwest Highlands, and slightly fresher air coming into the northwest as well. 10 or 11 degrees Celsius here, whilst we're 13 to 15 degrees in the sunnier skies in the south and east. So still feeling pleasant, but not quite as warm as it has been today. A lot of nice weather around through Friday, Saturday and also Sunday. I expect our temperatures will get up to about 15 or 16 degrees, especially around Glasgow and also around North Lanarkshire. But look at that. You might have thought I've missed out the one there, but well, yeah, it's turning a lot chillier next week.
TUI Blue Hotels sponsor STV Weather.
And just before we go, an update on the orphans being evacuated from Ukraine with the help of a Hibs supporters charity. They are finally on a flight to the UK. In the last hour, the plane carrying the 52 children from Dnipro took off from Warsaw. They were due to leave Poland on Monday, but were held up because of paperwork problems. Well, the group and their carers will land in London tonight before making their way to their new accommodation in the Trossachs.
And that's all from us tonight. Rona will be here with Scotland tonight at 10:40.
And we're back again tomorrow at 6. From all of us here, have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Good night.